Hey, brass facts here. Remember when I said I was going to take a break from suppressor content? Yep, me either. So I got my Maverick coffee because I ran out of coffee. It tastes like burnt shit. Let's do another suppressor video. Look, you're probably aware, but flow or low back pressure cans are the new hotness in the suppressor field. And then chief among those, probably the Silencer Co. Velos, the Hux 556K, and the Cat White Bread. What a name. Somehow by accident, I've assembled the Flow Exodia and have all three of these cans on roughly currently the same setup, 14.5 mid. So yeah, that's what we're going to do this video. Compare them all side by side, mainly on signature, as well as a quick touch on some of the user interface, because why not? At the end of the day, we're all gear nerds here, and we like to compare how these things do, because actually a number of us in the group want to buy a Flow can, so, well, we put them side by side, and you're along for the ride, or something. I'm going to leave out sound performance because, well, downrange wise, these all sound like Flow cans, which is very boomy, and to the shooter, they sound pretty good, but I don't really want to test that because it's still loud as shit and it's going to hurt your ears. So we're going to leave that to Pew Science. Oh, people keep asking, they asked on the live stream, they're going to probably ask in the comment section, why not the Flow Ventum? This is why. I don't really like titanium cans for their flash performance, and I don't think they hold up very well to the cadence of fire that we use. They have their use case. I don't partake in that use case. All right, starting with the basics, we got the Velos at 15.2 ounces, just shy of $1,000. The White Bread with the muzzle device variant, 15.7 ounces, $1,250, and then the Flow 556K, just shy of 13 ounces, $1,125. If you are extremely autistic and have been window shopping for a while, you'll note that a lot of these weights are kind of way off from what websites show. Asking around, I think this has to do with the fact that their 3D printing, press machines, whatever it's called, have about a 1 to 2 ounce range of weight depending on how the printer felt about your particular can that day and if it wanted to go home early, which is a little concerning considering there's a lot of very thin parts in there, so having them even thinner than spec is a thing, or they probably account for that. I don't know. Hey, editing brass facts here. I kind of took this for granted, but I think this probably should be mentioned. This is sort of an irregular lineup of different cans. We have the Cat White Bread, which is the only variant that you can technically buy of this thing. There is no long or K variant at this time. The 556K has a long variant, so just 556, but that's in a weird super alloy titanium, whatever, not in the running in my opinion. The Velos is actually the Velos K that we're looking at here today, not the full-size Velos. Now you might say we should run the full-size Velos because that's going to give us better performance. Sure, but in my opinion that's less of an apples-to-apple comparison because the Velos full-size is about a half-inch larger than the Cat White Bread, which is the longest can we have here today, and as such I think we would have a very odd range of can lengths. So in my opinion, the Velos K, the 556K, and the Cat White Bread is the most apples-to-apples comparisons. That's why we chose them here today. One of the biggest overlooked aspects of owning a can is how it attaches to your muzzle device or barrel. While this isn't really a part of the performance dynamics, except with the Flow, it is a big part of living and using the can. The Velos uses Psycho's ASR mount, and while I do like the ASR flash hiders, I don't like anything else about it. It's kind of the same deal with Dead Air Chemo. It's a good system, but it's a lot of weight, space, and cost taken up by a heavy mounting interface that's just done far better nowadays with taper-style mounts. Because the threads are Charlie, it can be swapped to Reardon, but good luck finding that in stock, dude. The Flow 556K is the opposite of the Velos here. The mounting interface it doesn't really take up any space, it just goes right flush up to it, and the flash hider is doing a lot of work to assist with the suppression, so it is adding actual usable space to the can. But you're now stuck with Huxworks flavor of printer ink, and you cannot convert it to any other type of attachment. This is very unfortunate if you use this gun as both a suppressed and unsuppressed rifle, because the Huxworks muzzle devices, even the sort of, non-OEM ones, like say the Cobalt Kinetics ones, are hellishly loud when used standalone. Compensator loud, I'm talking, even though they're all generally flash hiders. So I would not recommend running a Flow as sort of a hybrid setup. The muzzle devices just suck so much ass. The Cat Whitebread wins out, sort of. You can buy both as hub compatible, which means you need to buy a mount or a direct thread interface, and cool, off to the races, do whatever you want with that. I, however, bought their existing muzzle device system because I was just going to pin and weld this and leave it on one rifle anyway, and then kind of take it off and on, and I thought that was great. Unfortunately, their existing mounting interface, and I'll talk about this more in the review, seems to not really lock up nearly as tightly as any other taper style interface that I've used, and after about 150 to 200 rounds, it tends to unthread itself. You can crank it on with a crescent wrench or something, but then you run into the issue of what was the point of this QD device in the first place. Once again, I'll talk about it more in the actual review. Shout out to Peace of Mind Guns who got me this guy. They're kind of hard to get. I paid full price, so it's not like they gave this to me, but I like shouting out local Utah boys. Just one thing to note, the muzzle device that does come with it, if you do follow my footsteps, is not pin and weld ready. Yeah.
What's that, dude?
9mm be like...
Oh, man.
Shooting 45 be like... Okay, so that gets us to our flash performance, which is what I'm mostly here to show you today. Real quick, the usual disclaimers. Like with cameras through LPVOs, this footage is not accurate to reality. Cameras have a really poor dynamic range, and even the cameras that shoot in RAW and then are doctored afterwards are, well, doctored in only a close approximation to what humans see. As such, I just left the footage alone, and the 4 people we had out that day basically just observed stuff, set it to the microphone, and then I'm transcribing that here to you right now. So the footage on screen is just a relative performance difference, not an actual performance. The cameras just don't pick it up well enough. Okay, flash performance under NV. Let's get into it. We did this a couple times to confirm the results, but the 5.56K seems to have a bit more consistent muzzle signature from the first round pop, normal fire, and rapid fire, while the Velos seemed to have an aggressive first round pop and rapid fire, but did very well on the slow fire. Interestingly, this also applied to anecdotal sound, with the Flow 5.56K sounding generally better overall, but the Velos sounding more consistent throughout the range. But overall, they're pretty similar, and the Whitebread really outperforms them here under night vision, with a very low flash from first round pop to slow fire to rapid fire. Jumping over to the visual spectrum, it almost looks like, well, nothing. The 5.56K beats out the Velos despite it throwing a bit more sparks, which you can see, obviously, but not on camera, while the Velos has less sparks, but a much more bigger defined plume, which is actually what's going to give you away, not the sparks. The sparks are basically invisible past a certain distance. Once again, though, both of them are smoked by the Cat Whitebread, which basically has an invisible flash report outside of a very small first-round pop. Truly, it's actually really impressive, and we really only noticed any kind of flash yet when we did that quick 3-round mag dump. We were so shocked by this, we did it like a number of times and confirmed, yep, stellar performance. Next up was high volume fire, about 60 rounds. Remember, as a can heats up, it's going to begin to glow under night vision. However, only once the can reaches saturation and then begins to heat up does it become noticeably visible downrange. So if you can kind of see a soft glow, that's hard to see, but if you can see it fluorescing on camera where it's basically blowing out the camera, that is something you're going to be able to see hundreds of yards away. I call this the fluorescing or saturation point. I don't know, it's a made-up term, whatever. Note, this is only visible under night vision. We're not talking about these cans getting so red hot to the visible spectrum that you can see it downrange. That's just not a thing until you put it on a machine gun. The Cat actually loses out here, heating up extremely fast, reaching the saturation point in about 30 to 40 rounds, which honestly makes sense. If it's going to perform really well, that performance has to come from somewhere, and that, well, it's converting gas to heat. The Flow and Velos both made it up right to the second magazine before getting really bad, so around 50-60 rounds. I do want to point out again the flash performance. The Flow 5.56K and the Velos flash performance really get bad as the can heats up during rapid fire, and you can kind of see it vomiting shit out the front, and the flash report gets bigger, while the Whitebread held up much more consistent throughout this entire mag dump, really not getting significantly worse. Because we were mag dumping, this actually transitions really well to me testing out the gas to the face department. How well are these things working at their primary on-the-tin goal of reducing gas? Something I am very distinctly aware of as a Satan spawn lefty. Now the key to note here is this part is extremely subjective, and on top of that, we didn't have perfectly identical hosts. They were all 14.5 mid-lengths, but they were, different rifles, so grain of salt, the usual. All cans were absolutely doing their job as flow cans and very pleasant compared to the other traditional cans we had out that day, even when all of them are tuned. But the 5.56K actually won out notably here. While there was a slight increase from slow fire to mag dumping, it was subtle and not something I think I would have noticed had I not been paying attention to it. The Velos and White Bread were still very pleasant, but they weren't quite on the 556K tier of performance when it came to low back pressure-ness. Low back pressure-ness? Came to low back, whatever. Asking around after, for some people in the know, as they say, this actually tracks with some objective metrics. The Flow has by far the lowest back pressure in the sub 5% range. I guess that obnoxious flash hider is really putting in the work, while the other two have slightly worse performance in that regard in the 10 to 15% range, give or take.
And finally, some aspects that you may want to consider that don't really go anywhere neatly in this video. The Velos is a very nice can in terms of actually, I hate the word fit and finish, right? Because the Flow and the Cat White Bread look, they just look like poured concrete, while the Velos has that look, but it's actually shrouded on multiple sides by some metal, and it just makes the can overall just look like a much nicer can that is actually worth, $1,000. On top of that, the shrouding actually does a lot in that first 30 rounds to 60 rounds of shrouding the glow of the can and limiting it to only a very small area. Past that, it doesn't really matter, but it is something to consider, and it buys the Velos a lot of time in terms of thermal signature to night vision downrange compared to the other cans.
And that's the show. For once, I'm not going to talk your ear off with a conclusion. I think the results mostly speak for themselves. I'll just say, don't get too bent out of shape of a lot of the small factors, especially the thermal signature, or perhaps the weight, or the cost, or the mounting interface. Get whatever can you can get. Really, the only thing here today that I personally viewed as influential was the flash performance, specifically on the Cat White Bread. Outside of that, the performance is fairly similar across the board relative to other types of cans, which I guess is me concluding this video. So wow, I'm just really going back on my word all day. This was a comical amount of ammo for a single video, so if you want to support this single-man operation of mine, consider heading over to Subscribestar, where you can help feed my dog wet food instead of Costco kibble, get early access to videos, Substar exclusives like the Brock and Hop Power Half Hour, which is almost never a half hour. Damn shrinkflation. You can also head over to the Nova group. It's an alternate channel where we kind of just dump sort of B reviews and stuff that we did want to put on the channel. So go check it out. It's free of charge, whatever. Regardless, thanks for watching, and we'll see you fellas later.